Hello, students of Global Business Communication. It is Saturday night, and this was supposed to be a lecture recorded yesterday, but it didn't end up happening. So this is playing catch up a little bit. Tomorrow night I will record for Monday. So this is part 2 of the lecture for this week. It'll probably be a little bit shorter than the first one. I spoke to you about hot and cold mediums and Marshall McLuhan. So we want to talk about particular social media options that are, in particular, these are the things that are part of our everyday life, but they have been since they were launched, they have turned into vehicles for marketing, for branding, and for business. You're probably too young to remember when Facebook was launched, but maybe you know about it. The initial offering, the IPO, the initial public offering of Facebook people thought it was high. So when the stock price was opened up and people started investing in it, the initial offering looked too high to a lot of people, so the stock price dropped a little. But soon they realized what sort of reach Facebook ended up having when it, reached a billion users, and the stock price eventually, eclipsed the original offering many times over, and you ended up, if you had bought it the first day or on the dip, but that's just kind of luck, really, unless you're an expert, you ended up making a lot of money from investing in Facebook. And that's because when these things started getting traction 15 years ago, in some cases earlier than that, but really started gaining traction 10 years ago, Google bought YouTube, and this is the platform that I'm using right now to deliver content to you. All these things, people had to get a sense of how they were going to be used, and the business community didn't really understand it well. And I mean, private citizens were ahead sometimes of what the businesses were capable of doing. A good example of that is what we used to call YouTube All-Stars, and I'm not going to link you the South Park episode with a hilarious take on YouTube All-Stars, but there were certain videos that just millions of people watched them, and people didn't really understand why. One of my favorite examples is the sneezing panda, and I'm not going to link it, like I said, but if you listen to the lecture carefully and you're curious of what I'm referring to, you can search on YouTube for sneezing panda, and I don't know what it's at now. That at one point that was the most popular video in the world, at something like 50 million views, and now it's hundreds of millions. It's just a panda, chewing bamboo, and then the panda sneezes. I believe the baby panda sneezes, and it's a very cute, loud sneeze, and the mother panda, freezes in shock at the sound, and it's like a 15-second video, and millions and millions of people watched it. Now that didn't gain the person who posted that, the owner of the video, the creator of the video was what we call a UCC. They created the content, user-created content, and they just uploaded it for free, and they didn't get any money from YouTube or Google, so it was never monetized. And that continues to be the case for a lot of people, including me. I already mentioned to you about the 1,000, subscriber threshold as being sort of a benchmark of Google just taking notice of you, and but you have to understand the particular elements of YouTube in order to get an audience, in order to get monetized. Now, it's not my object in using YouTube. It's just a convenient platform for me to deliver content to you because I already had a channel I actually created a new channel for this class, but I have another channel which I'm probably going to link everything together once this semester is over. But for now, I'm just trying to provide the best quality education I can to all of you. So, but now as I'm doing this, and you should always try, my personal opinion is you should always try and multitask and try and, as you're doing your job, you should learn skills. Who knows? I mean, I've been a professor for 10 years, but I might involve myself in other businesses or start to branch out in my free time. Everybody does this kind of stuff. So it's a hard situation. It takes me hours and hours of extra time in order to make these videos for you, but I'm also learning how to be a YouTuber. And people take that term really lightly. Like it's like, oh, everybody makes a lot of money and they don't do very much work. I'm here in the flesh to tell you that's not true. If you're a YouTuber and you hit the jackpot because you made a funny video about the sneezing panda and 50 million people watched it, and YouTube gives you 10 cents a video, good for you. But that's not going to happen. That's like winning the lottery. So for most of us, including me, it's going to involve very carefully crafting something that is designed for an audience. It's sort of like marketing yourself if you're doing an individual thing like me. But if I was doing these videos, I don't know, for business education, for classes that were provided for executives or something like that, or I was doing interviews, or I was, running my own business, then these videos would take on more. I mean, I have the freedom because I'm just doing this for you to just have whiteboards hanging in the background and my books and stuff, and not really care about some of the subtleties that are involved in using social media for business communication, which is the name of this class. But you should be aware of all these things. And I'm talking about YouTube right now, just as an example. And why I'm talking about YouTube and the particulars about YouTube is because I would like you to choose a platform. We are going to talk about platforms in more detail in another class, but since we're just talking about new media, and I like to see what you can find and what you learn. When I introduce a topic, it's sometimes better for you to go out and find what information you can on your own and submit it to me before I tell you what I want to tell you, like for YouTube. And then what you write in your assignments is too heavily affected by what I say. So what I mean is I kind of want you to go fresh into this assignment. So I want you to do this for next Friday. This is the 18th. So that would make next Friday the 25th. No, this is Saturday. Excuse me. It's the 24th is next Friday. So April 24th, you have to hand in an assignment based on this topic, which is choose something in the new media. I don't really care what it is. I'm going deeply into the YouTube thing as an example. So you're not allowed. No YouTube. That's forbidden because I don't want you to be affected by what I'm saying. It's basically what I'm trying to get at. So Facebook is fine. WhatsApp is fine. Whatever you use, Twitter. I'm not sure what you use. I had a discussion. One of the students in this class, I briefly talked to her about, I shouldn't say her, him or her. It might be a her though. I think it's like this class is half and half, so it's a small class. But anyway, I had a discussion with a student. We talked about Tinder, and Tinder is a dating app, and you could talk about that if you want. I know you're business students, so you may want to take something that's more business oriented, but you can take any approach you want as long as you're analytical. So let me get into what I mean by analytical is you have to break it down in terms of its strong points and its weak points, and you have to use criteria to analyze whichever application, platform, social media you choose. You have to discuss it in terms of and be analytical when you discuss it. Not just say I like it, and my friends use it, and it's really popular, and it's fun, and it's easy. That's pretty weak. I want you to be more careful about how you present it to me. So there's certain things about social media that you need to know. A lot of, you can talk about Google. Google is part of the new media too, right? You can even talk about, if you want to talk about sort of versions of the new media as well, like how, certain networks and stuff start to provide their own ways of delivering content. Like the BBC is the British Broadcast Corporation, and it's controlled by the British government, and they provide content for you. And if you're British, I don't think I've tried to watch it here, but even the VPNs and stuff like that, they don't really let you. They block all the stuff. They block all the people who are not in the United Kingdom, essentially. So, but if you're in the United Kingdom, you can watch the BBC all the time, as far as I know. And again, I'm not British, so I tried to do it, but it didn't work out because my my IP is Korean. And you can just watch all their cable content through a player, or the BBC player. You download it, and then you can just watch it. And you don't have to worry about cable or anything like that. You can just watch it on the internet. Another aspect of the BBC is they have their own website, and they have their own blogs, and they have their own shows, and then they upload the videos on YouTube. You can watch the BBC all over the place. You can watch documentaries, and you can download stuff, and you can probably still buy their stuff if you wanted to order it. They would probably still have archives of things. They have podcasts. See, the number of things that we have, the new media is everywhere. It's ubiquitous. That's a good word to describe it. It's everywhere. And all of these things, though, they have certain elements to them that you can analyze. Like if you're going to talk about Google, you're probably going to have to mention algorithms. An algorithm is a formula, and like it basically makes predictions and makes decisions on its own. So when you do anything in Google, the program has some sequence of actions that responds to what you try to do. So for example, you just type something in the search bar, and then it suggests a whole bunch of things, and then it tracks all these things, and then it's connected to GPS and everything, so you can turn it on and off location sensors, and you can get notifications. This topic is huge. I'm not trying to tell you to write everything about the particular system, application, company, program that you choose, but you have to hit some of the important things. If you're going to talk about Facebook, you might want to talk about how Facebook kind of has a reputation for not protecting or being careful about your privacy, and that's why Mark Zuckerberg testified in front of the Senate and Congress and didn't really look very good. He looked very, I don't know how to describe him. I don't want to be insulting to him, but he looked very distant and disconnected. And the older, elected members of the House and the Senate and Congress, they looked out of touch too. Like they didn't understand how it worked, and he just was able to avoid most of the questions because they just didn't understand how Facebook actually worked, and how they collected data and how they advertised and what they did with stuff. So how can you really control what Zuckerberg is doing? Or Google or anybody else if you don't get it. Donald Trump famously accused Google of smearing him, and when you typed in Donald Trump, the top media, the news that would come up was mostly negative, and he accused Google of being biased, and basically the CEO of Google was like, Mr. President, there's no such thing as bias in the way our company works. Google operates on an algorithm. So if that's the most popular story, is the one about you doing something that people disapprove of or sounds bad, that's what comes out. Google doesn't choose all the bad news and say, no, that's what fake news does. And Donald Trump accuses every media group of doing that. And in some cases, he's right. There are media groups that are liberal and they do not like what the president, the decisions that he makes, and they do spin stories that way. But that's not what Google's doing. Google's just showing the stories that are searched and read and viewed and shared the most. And that has nothing to do with the agenda of the company. That's just what's the most popular. So, now I've talked about Google too. So let's just exclude Google and YouTube. But you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. So algorithms would be a great thing to talk about. You can talk about efficiency, right? Like how much time. When you use an application, you want to use it, and then you want to get the information that you want, and have the results that you want faster. So you could characterize that as efficiency. Customer service is one of those things that is killing me right now because I really don't know how to manage the YouTube Studio. I don't know how to use software very well, but there's nobody to call at Google. You can just go through the help menus, and then again, it's a bot. There's just certain programmed responses. They will not talk to you until you get popular enough for them to be like, okay, Mr. Sullivan, he's got 1,000 people following him, and we can make some money from this guy. So why don't we give him some tech support? Why don't we give him some advice on how to run his channel? But otherwise, they just ignore you. It's kind of elitist. I don't know. I realize it's just a matter of there's not enough people working at Google to help me. So I got to, in some way, prove to them worthwhile. The only way I can do that is by being popular. Again, this is not because Google doesn't like me. If I was Donald Trump, I would be like, well, you guys you just don't like Canadians living in Korea. That's why you're not taking care of me and you're not answering my phone calls. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is the numbers aren't there. So nobody's home when I try to contact them. So customer service is not good. In a lot of these cases, you have to figure it out yourself. And if you become influential enough, you manage it properly, then you can, then you have some leverage, and then you can probably make contact. Censorship is important. That's another thing that Facebook recently did because, and Twitter as well. Like there's a question of what's allowed and what's not allowed, what's illegal and what's legal, and freedom of speech and stuff like that. So the morality issue comes in there. Like, is it okay for people to just say things, whatever they want, or not? The issue of terrorism comes up, for example. When somebody suggests that they're gonna blow something up, or they rant and rave, and they say they accuse somebody of something, or they say they're gonna attack somebody. What do you do about that? Every media, every organization, media application has their own rules, and some of them are quite strict. Even in games, often lots of younger people play games, so certain things are not allowed for kids and they're allowed for adults, and that's something that has to be managed as well. And every application or platform has to make their decisions about that, whether it's going to be for a certain group of people or not, and whether there's going to be restrictions. Of course, if the media gets big enough, like YouTube or Facebook. I mean, these things were free, and Facebook's still free, kind of. But you sacrifice something. They become monetized, and then their ability to bring in revenue, whether that's advertising revenue or subscription fees or whatever it is, donations. If we're talking about different types of, sometimes there's a application called, there's a website called GoFundMe They all have their upsides and downsides, and you have to analyze them. And if you're going to make these decisions for your company, or for your own business, or for your future, or for your own personal life, then you have to understand how these things work. And if you understand how they work, then you're going to be able to utilize them properly and avoid making mistakes that could cost you. In certain cases, it could cost you your job. You could, or business, or customers, or you could, you know, end up with negative consequences, to say the least. So presentation is part of it too. Like I mentioned already, security. So you have to consider all these things. And I would like you to choose one, just one, whatever it is up to you. Choose one of these websites. There's so many of them. Reddit is a great website. That's an example. I'm just naming the ones that basically I use. But whatever it is, social media, Kakao Talk is one of them. They all have, we can go on and on all day because there's so many aspects of them. Kakao Talk has a Kakao Map. They have Kakao Bank, Kakao Pay. You can do all kinds of things that people use them for business. They use them for their financial, expediency and other things too. So that is your homework, and that is my explanation of the new media for this week. So please, one page, hand it in next week. The deadline is April 24th by midnight, okay? And that's all there is for this week. So thank you for tuning in again, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Have a good night.